So today we are reading from Prabhupada, chapter 15. As today, as you know, is the last day of Purushottama. So, you know the title of chapter 15? Anyone? Title of chapter 15 is
Purushottama. Are we allowed to bring roller skates too?
So we're reading from chapter 15, text 3. 3 and 4, they're together, so we can chant the first one together, and then I will chant the second. In this book is page 715. It's on the screen as well. Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Namto na chadir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatam enam suviruthamolam. Ashvatam enam suviruthamolam. Asanga shastrena dhrikena chitva. Asanga shastrena dhrikena chitva. Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatam enam suviruthamolam. Asanga shastrena dhrikena chitva.
Narupamasye hatato palapyate.
Narupamasye hatato palapyate.
Nato sampratishta. Ashvatamena suvirudhamolam. Sanga shastrena dhrikena chitva.
Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatamenam suvirudhamolam. Asanga shastrena dhrikena chitva.
Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatamenam suvirudhamolam. Sanga shastrena dhrikena chitva.
Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatamenam suvirudhamolam. Asanga shastrena dhrikena chitva.
Narupamasye hatato palapyate. Nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta. Ashvatamenam suvirudhamolam. Asanga shastrena dhrikena chitva.
everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, fourth verse. Tatapadam tatparimabhitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyaha tameva chatyam purusham prapadye yatah pravritti prasrita purani. Word for word? No? Not. Rupam, the form. Asya, of this tree. Iha, in this world. Tatha, also. Upalakhyate, can be perceived. Na, never. Antaha, and. Na, never. Cha, also. Adihi, beginning. Na, never. Cha, also. Sampratishtha, the foundation. Ashvatham, banyan tree. Enam, this. Suvirotha, strongly. Moolam, rooted. Asanga shastrena, by the weapon of detachment. Rittena, strong. Chitva, cutting. Tataha, thereafter. Padam, situation. Tat, that. Parimākitavyam, has to be searched out. Yasmin, where? Gataha, going. Na, never. Nivartanti, they come back. Bhuyaha, again. Tam, to him. Eva, certainly. Cha, also. Adyam, original. Purusham, the personality of Godhead. Prapadye, surrender. Yataha, from whom? Pravrittihi, the beginning. Prasrita, extended. Purani, very old. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began, and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out the origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality. And by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures. And one must hear from persons who are actually knowledge. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place, whence having gone, one never returns to this false reflected tree, is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain favor of that personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and this is a result of performing devotional service with hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself. Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Saraswati Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Is there anyone here for the first time today? Welcome. Hare Krishna. So today, as I was saying, I chose the verse from chapter 15 because today is the last day of Purushottam month. So, as Prabhu, thank you so much for giving me this purifying service. And first of all, I'd like to ask for the blessings of the devotees, that I may speak something that is inspiring and nicely glorifying Bhagavad Gita. And as Prabhu started the Purushottam month with a wonderful lecture from the chapter 15, so I thought today is the last day of Purushottam month, so we read from chapter 15 again. And just a little introduction how we come to this verse. At the beginning of chapter 15, we have this analogy of the banyan tree that is a tree that is described as having the root outwards, so it's basically upside down because it's kind of reflecting. So it's like the material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So this banyan tree is a reflection of the real tree. So it's an analogy to understand how the material world, and that's why Krishna chose this banyan tree, because they are kind of entangled. So in the same way we are entangled in the material world because our material desires. And it says in the previous verse how it's gunas and karma that nourish this tree. So the three modes of material nature and the karmic activities that nourish this tree. So basically our material desires and activities that keep us entangled birth after birth. And so here in these verses, the solution is given, what to do with this being in the material world and getting entangled birth after birth and suffering after suffering. The solution is to just cut down the whole tree, basically. Here it says that with the weapon of detachment, we should cut down this tree. So how to get out of the material world? Krishna is given here the process. And Srila Prabhupada in this purport specifically, he gives a nice angle on this. He says that by surrender to the Supreme Lord, then detachment is automatically developed. So that's interesting because then by surrendering, one becomes automatically detached. And that's the topic for today. I was thinking of speaking about this idea of surrender. Because many times we hear this word, and especially like in a materialistic sense, surrender, it has like a very negative meaning. Like, for example, if you think about war, the army that surrenders is usually the one that is kind of like is synonymous with failure and like yes. So it's not such a nice thing to surrender. But in spiritual life, it's actually the opposite because it's something that is very, it's a very exalted position. So, first of all, I'd like to hear from you, like, what do you think? What is the, what does it mean surrender to us? Like, how can we apply surrender? Because it's an important meditation, like to not just read the Shastra, but actually think about how we can apply Shastra. Because Shastra is like it's like a map. Maybe nowadays we can say like Google Maps, you know, that you may have the destination there, but if you don't walk or you don't drive to the destination, that's completely useless. So that's why, like, thinking about how. What does it mean for us and how can we apply surrender to our life? That's very important. So maybe if you have like a few ideas, anyone, if you want to share.
Surrender means like a complete surrender to Guru instruction, and takes the instruction and his body complete surrender. That's his complete full surrender to Krishna.
Just do whatever
Yeah.
they say, whatever
Yeah.
Guru says, you just do it. That's surrender. Wow, that's very deep, Prabhu. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Surrendering is something like living life without worrying, because you leave everything on Lord Krishna and think that whatever is happening on his wish. So like my dad always says that without Krishna's wish, even one leaf on the tree cannot move. So anything is happening, going to happen, don't worry about it, just go with it, because you know that everything is done by God. Whether it is good or whether even if it is bad thing happens for good reason. And once you understand that things are happening only by his wish, without his wish even a small leaf cannot move. So we are completely like controlled by Krishna. So just surrender yourself to Krishna, and then you live your life without worry, without like anything. Just go with it as long as your intentions are good and you keep going, keep assisting Krishna's wish, then you live happy life.
That's amazing. You know, like they say that Krishna, it says in Shastra, is the supreme controller. You know, like
Yes,
he's
yes.
so actually he's in control of everything. So if we just surrender to that, that's a good point. Okay.
Always remember Krishna and never forget.
Wow. That's the highest principle of all Shastra. That's in one sentence. Okay.
Surrender is one of the processes of devotional service. It's called Atmanivedana, and it's meant for advanced devotees. So in the beginning, we try to reach that point by engaging in, sadhana bhakti, by different other processes of devotional service, so that ultimately we see ourselves only as servants of Krishna, and we only want to please him by love and devotion. Yeah,
So it's a process, like it's gradual.
One might think that, as soon as you start, on your journey in Krishna consciousness, that you've already surrendered. But it's an ongoing process of doing that.
It's not one-off.
Because we call the different stages of spirituality, where you come to the point of anartana vritti, where you clear away the anartas from the heart. So these things all come about gradually, and ultimately you can come to the stage of Bali Maharaj, where he gave up everything. He's one of the examples of that. But he gave up absolutely everything. He's king to surrender, it can be, as you say, the beginning stages where we mentally give up material life in general, and then we continue on in a gradual way, so that ultimately we can reach that point of abnegation.
Wow, that's very deep point. Thank you. Yeah, so they're all like amazing ideas and meditations that we can think about. But there is also like a very nice verse about the 6 symptoms of surrender. And that is quoted in various scriptures, but it's also in Hari Bhakti Vilas by Sanatana Goswami, and it's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita in Madhya Lila 22nd chapter, verse 100, if you want to have a look, or maybe if you want to put on the screen if you find. So, and it's nice that in Shastra we have like this systematic approach that like the acharyas have made it easier for us, so we don't have to, speculate too much, and we can check ourselves, like for how can we move forward from the point we're at, how can we move forward. So we kind of avoid the risk of being, in one sense, like sentimentally surrendered. Like, for example, I think like one day I think, oh, I'm so surrendered, I'm just thinking about Krishna all day, and then the next day maybe I don't feel like Prabhu was saying, it's like it's a process, especially in the neophyte stage, it's a very, it's an everyday choice to kind of moving forward to surrender. And I heard one devotee, really amazing, he said that Krishna is too important to be left to emotions, because emotions, they're products of the mind. So the mind is always flickering. So it's too unstable, it's too unreliable, that if we actually found the surrender in Shastra, then it's unshakable. So even if whenever we have like a bad day or some difficulties come into our life, then we can stay strong in that knowledge of the Shastra, and we can, remember these kind of verses to help us moving forward, even if it's not so easy. So let's have a look at these symptoms of surrender. So I'll just go through all of them quickly, and then each one we can go in depth and see how we can also apply for ourselves. So the first one is accept what is favorable for devotional service. So it's called Anukulyasya Sankalpa. And the second one, they're kind of connecting the first two. The second one is rejecting what is unfavorable for devotional service, for our Krishna consciousness, is Pratikulyasya Varjanam. And we can see that these two principles, they're kind of active principles. So it's something that we can actually do something that is kind of active. While the next four, they're more like disposition of the mind that help apply these two. So the third one is being firmly convinced that Krishna will give us protection, and that's Rakshisha Dipi Vishvasa. And the fourth one is accept Krishna as the maintainer and master. So is Gopritrevanam. So these two, if you have a look, is more like a disposition of the mind towards Krishna. What is our relationship with Krishna? Understanding that He's can give us protection, that He's the supreme maintainer, He's the master, like that. And then the fifth one is self-surrender, Atmanikshepa. And the sixth one is humility, Kartani. So these last two is more kind of a disposition of the mind towards ourselves, how we see ourselves, how can we fully surrender, like that. So the first two, we have like many examples in Shastra as well, but especially here in Bhagavad Gita, we have a great example, that's Arjuna, that how, if you see at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, how he had like all these ideas, why he didn't want to fight, why, it was wrong to go like his spiritual teachers, and his own family, and how by killing all these peoples, then the women will be left unprotected. So it was like something that he logically thought it was very wrong. And there were very nice logical arguments, but then Krishna's desire was that this war will happen because it was the right thing to do, because it was protecting Dharma. So what Arjun did at the end, he realized that's what was the right thing to do. So accepting what is favorable in that case was fighting the war, and rejecting what it was unfavorable was rejecting like all these ideas. So similarly for us, like we may not like to reject what is unfavorable for our spiritual practice. It may not be something very natural, but that's a process. That's also part of the process to accept what is favorable. Because we may not be able, for example, when we chant japa, we may not be able to control the mind, because it's very, as Arjun said also, it's very difficult to control the mind. It's more difficult than controlling the wind. But the actions and the environment where we chant, that is something that we can control much more easy. For example, to have like a nice environment, like a clean environment, sattvic, without distractions, without any noises. That is something that is easier to control than the mind. That is actually accepting what is favorable, because it's creating an environment where we can focus and we can like be free from distractions. And then another application that we can find is like in association with devotees. We can find like some devotees that are more inspiring for us. Then we should get more of that association. So then we can advance. Advancing towards surrender and doing actually something that we like. And in the same way also with Shastra, with scriptures, like sometimes, some people are more inclined to read philosophy, some people are more inclined to read the pastimes. And that is fine, because we use our own inclination to get more inspiration. So if there is something is more inspiring, then we can go for it. And something that is not so inspiring, then maybe we can leave for later. Maybe at that moment in life is not so inspiring. So that is something that we can apply, even if we are not on the battlefield and have to decide like such, difficult situations. Still in our life, we can take the principles of this and apply to our life. So the third one is being firmly convinced that Krishna will give us protection. So here there is a very famous example in the Shastra. We had like the festival not so long ago. So some of you may remember the drama as well, how the little Prahlad was tortured and trying to, kill in so many ways. So basically Prahlad was a very great devotee, but he was born in a demoniac family. So if you like the story, by the way, it's on Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto. The 7th canto is explained the whole story how Prahlad was born in this demonic family, and Hiranyakashipu tried to reform him. He tried to make him a good demon, but that didn't work. So Prahlad not only was on the side of Hiranyakashipu's enemy, but he was preaching, he was actually spreading the glories of his worst enemy. So that's why Hiranyakashipu tried to kill him in so many ways. But what is interesting is that Prahlad, it was just by remembering the Lord, he was protected all the time. And he was completely fearless. He had no fear because he was firmly convinced that Krishna will give him protection. So that fearlessness comes from this conviction. And we can see also like how Prabhupada was also fearless, because he came to a foreign country without anything, he didn't know anybody, so, and he started this whole movement like that. So that's fearlessness. So this and this also Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Name Bhakta Pranashati, how he protects the devotees. He says to Arjuna, declare it boldly that my devotee will never perish, because he always protects his devotees. But that doesn't mean that like the devotees, that the time they become devotees, they don't get any illnesses, and that they they don't get any miseries in life. Everything is amazing. That's it may come as Prahlad, like a protection on a physical level, but it may also not come in on that level, because Krishna protects the consciousness. That's the most important thing, is that he protects the consciousness of the devotee. He may or may not protect the physical body. And we probably all have like some realizations on this, how like sometimes hopeless situations, they kind of somehow they work out with Krishna's magic, like for example, like last week, like we were doing garlands, and somehow I don't know, like I was looking at all these amazing flowers, and I was looking at the time, and I was like, this is, we will never finish in time. And it was like looking at the time, looking at the garlands, I was, oh my God. But then somehow, like we finished just on time. Like when Kripamoya Prabhu was coming, then we just finishing like the last garland or something. So it was like a perfect timing. So anyway, we can, we may not be, like as exalted devotees as Prahlad Maharaj, we may not be in those situations, but we still can take those principles and see the applications, even if in our, everyday life and services. The next one is accept Krishna as maintainer and master of Goptrit Devaranam. So this is like to understand Krishna's supreme position, that he is the supreme Lord. So the supreme, if we are looking for help, if we are looking for shelter, then there is no need to ask anyone else or to rely, and we cannot rely on anyone else ultimately, because like for example, Srila Prabhupada in that, when this verse is quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, is giving the example of demigods, that they cannot give the ultimate protection. But also, like we can see in our life as well, like that sometimes we can, we try to take shelter of like a relationship in this material world, but we can see that they cannot give the ultimate protection. So that there is a very nice verse on the second canto, and defining the body, children, and wife as fallible soldiers. So we can relate to that, how like people of this world, our family or our own body as well, is not eternal. So they're not eternal, that they cannot give, we cannot actually rely on them, because they're like fallible soldiers, that they're kind of temporary. So so actually this idea that Krishna is the ultimate maintainer and master, it means that we just by doing devotional service, everything is included. And that's the verse that's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There is the definition of Shraddha, is Madhya Lila 22:62, and you find there how basically like a Shraddha is the firm faith that by doing devotional service, everything is included. So we don't need to do any extra there, it says that automatically like all subsidiary activities are performed. So it means like all everything is included in bhakti. So I remember like when I first started like chanting, and I had this idea that, oh my god, like this mantra is so powerful that I need to do some different meditations before to purify my consciousness, and then I can move on to the mantra. that's actually not the right understanding. The right understanding is that everything is included in the mantra. We don't need to do any extra before or after. Or sometimes you find like sometimes some people, they have like this idea of putting like different personalities on the altar, so at least one can help, you know. So, like for example, my mom, she has like a little altar, and she has like, there is a picture of Krishna because I gave her, so that's there. But then there is Buddha as well, and then there is like her favorite Christian saint there as well, because the idea is like, if at least one, you know, I don't know which one is actually. So, on one sense, it's good because it means that one is realizing that we cannot save ourselves. We need like higher protection. That is very good understanding that we are not. It's not just our own effort that can help us ultimately, but at the same time, it's kind of not having full faith in one and having like different ones, so at least, you know, you get some help somehow. So anyway, the next one is self-surrender, Atmanikshepa, and this means like complete surrender. So here we're going at a very, very high level. It means like completely surrendering our body, our mind, everything. So there is a very nice song that my Guru Maharaj sometimes like quotes in his lectures, and it's by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Actually, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has like a full collection of songs, the Sharanagati. So this one is Manasu Deho Keho. So it's very nice because it says there like how his mind, his body, his family, everything is surrendered to Krishna. So it's a very high level. It even says that like that Krishna can kill him or he can protect him. He doesn't mind because he's completely surrendered to the Lord, that he doesn't mind even if he chooses to protect him or to kill him. And he even comes to the level of saying that he doesn't mind to be reborn as a worm, as long as he can be a devotee. And he doesn't want to be born as like having such a high birth as a Brahma, if he cannot be a devotee. So he's putting like bhakti as superior of all these opulences of the heavenly planets, of such a long life, such unimaginable sense enjoyment that you can have in Brahmaloka. So so that you can pray like this, like sincerely, like honestly, but at the same time, if we cannot surrender fully, like 100%, because one thing is trying to serve as much as we can, but like be 100% surrendered is really difficult. But one thing that we can do is we can surrender some portion of our time fully. Like for example, having like a specific time for sadhana, that's very helpful because at least at that time you are surrendered to the Lord because you're giving that time for Him, for His service. So to put as priority, to give some time for Krishna, that's kind of a doable level of surrender. And then, like from that, we can always, increase step by step and move forward. So, okay, fine. So the next one, the last one, is humility, kalpani. So, humility is something at the center of Krishna consciousness that, Mahaprabhu said, about the third verse of the Shikshastakam, to be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, be ready to give all respect to others and expect no respect for oneself. And he says that by doing this, then we can chant the holy name constantly. So it's something that is so important. That's the secret for chanting constantly. And one thing that I was studying recently that it was kind of connecting with this is how you probably know the story of how Parikshit was cursed to die in 7 days. So that's how the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoke. It was cursed by, it is just a minor offense to a Brahmana, but for that offense, it was cursed by the son of that Brahmana, a young boy that is just like out of arrogance. He just cursed Parikshit Maharaj. And what is interesting about this is that Parikshit Maharaj, even if he had the power to counter curse that Shringi, that boy, he didn't do that. And even if, he could have said, I am the king, you're just a Brahmana boy, you're just like, but he didn't say anything. He took that as an opportunity to get absorbed, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, to get absorbed in spiritual knowledge so he could prepare to go back to the spiritual world. And that's where, that's very interesting, like how it didn't react, because the first kind of impulse that we usually have, that is something wrong is coming to us, the first thing is that like we try to react, we try to say, no, this is not fair, this is, but there is a wonderful verse in first canto in the 18th chapter. There is this verse how the devotees of the Lord, they are so tolerant that actually even if they are cursed or they are cheated or they are what else does it say? It says that even if they are mistreated in any possible way, they don't have that propensity to avenge themselves. And even if they are killed, they don't have that propensity. That's relating to Parikshit Maharaj. Okay, for us it may not be, like it may be too much, and we need to, understand our limits. But what is interesting is that Prabhupada in the purport, he says that devotees of the Lord, they don't never misuse their power for personal benefit. That is something interesting, that the devotees are so absorbed in devotional service that they don't even care if they are offended. So this idea is quite strong, because the first thing that we want to do is blaming someone, like finding someone to blame when we get like offended or when we get like something that we don't like. Then the first impulse is just to find someone to blame. Who did this? Where is this coming from? But actually, the devotees have more like the approach of trying to learn, to think about what we can learn from the situation. How can we, instead of reacting, how can we move forward in a way that we do what is best for our spiritual life. And that's why these principles, you can see how it kind of help to apply the first two principles, to accept what is favorable, to advance in our surrender in that way, because this humility is something that's so important. There is one devotee once asked my Guru Maharaj, he asked like a question, he was saying that some authorities, they say that I should do this service, but I feel like I'm not, someone else can do more efficiently. I feel like I'm not doing this in a nice way, I should do something else. And it was interesting, the reply that my Guru Maharaj gave is that Krishna consciousness, devotional service is not about efficiency, it's about transformation into humble devotees of the Lord. So I thought that that was such a nice meditation for my services as well, because I feel like I'm not good at any of my services that I'm doing. So at least like I can develop some humility, hopefully. Or maybe not even that, but at least trying. So, just to conclude, so we can open up to some questions. So today we spoke about surrender, and we saw these 6.6 symptoms of surrender, and how can we check ourselves, how can we advance towards our level of surrender by accepting what is favorable, rejecting what is unfavorable for our spiritual practice, and being firmly convinced that Krishna will give us protection, and then accept Krishna as the maintainer and the Supreme Master, and in that way surrendering ourselves fully and develop humility. So that comes to most important question. So why is it important to surrender? So one point is Srila Prabhupada gave in the purport, and he said that it's important because by surrendering one becomes automatically detached. So that's why it's very important. But one point I was also thinking about, and maybe we can conclude with this, and maybe you can share if you also have some ideas why it's important to surrender. That the spiritual world is all about unconditional surrender. We cannot go to the spiritual world with our, I will serve you, my Lord, if, when I like, terms and conditions apply. Right? It really doesn't work like that. So in that sense, like material world, here in the material world, and being part of a community of trying to, serve the devotees, that is also like kind of preparation. When we have to surrender to our superior or to the order of the spiritual master, like Prabhu was saying, and we had like a wonderful initiation ceremony last week. So that is all kind of preparation for that consciousness, the consciousness that I'm not in the center, Krishna is in the center. So how can we develop that humility to say, okay, I may have my ideas, but I may want to do something, but that is not maybe the right thing to do. That is not the right thing to do for our Krishna consciousness. So we do the right thing anyway, even if it's not so easy sometimes. So I'll conclude here, and if there is any questions, corrections, or reflections,
Thank you very much for your class. I'm just wondering, in one of the Shastras I've noticed that they say that humility is not different from bhakti. So it's not said that it's not different from pure bhakti, prema bhakti, but
Mahaprabhu also said that, like this is, by developing humility, you can chant the holy name constantly. So that's bhakti, that's the same thing. If you can chant like Haridas Thakur, I mean, like he could chant like really like so many rounds every day, and that consciousness, it was so elevated because of that, and because of that, it could even, being different to all the temptations, like, even Maya herself. So
this is true.
yeah, so it's bhakti and humility, they're so connected that's you cannot be arrogant and chant, because it's just like, yeah, because if you think about, like I was saying, how bhakti is to put yourself out of the center and put Krishna in the center, then if you're arrogant, you're not able to do that because you're putting always yourself in the center. So it's very, very difficult to chant like that. So, and that's why we have difficulty sometimes to chant, because we feel like I want to do something else, I want to, and so.
Not enough humility.
Yes, that's a very good point. Thank you. Anything else? Yes, bro?
So surrender means samarpan in Sanskrit.
Yes.
Typical word is samarpan. So if you go to the Kurukshetra, the battlefield, so you'll find you have to go and there will be defined by the sat or any satellite. But once you want to go there, you will find the surrender singh. You understand? Surrender singh, they are named there. So they will guide you for that Punjabi part of the Bhagavad Gita. If somebody, it's not must, but if somebody goes to see the places there, it's quite developed. So you will find one way many Samarpa Singh. They have got one student here. In there, who is not Indian, but this is the way, it's Samarpan is the word. So they put their name as Surrender Singh. Surrender and Singh.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You'll find many there.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Sorry. In the text, Krishna says that one has to seek that place to which having gone one never returns. So he's talking about Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. You're just briefly mentioning it just earlier on. I just wondered how far we have to, in our devotional service, how we should think about going back to Godhead, going to Vaikuntha. Should that be in our mentality, as we're practicing our sadhana, or in our progress in Krishna consciousness? Should that be a consideration that we want to go to Vaikuntha?
Yes, I mean, like, for us, I think it's important that we know where we're going, like why, so we are motivated to do our spiritual practice. Because if we are just doing it, but we don't know why, what is the ultimate goal of our spiritual practice, it's very difficult to have that motivation to go, to carry on. At the same time, like pure devotees, there is the wonderful verse of Lord Shiva in Srimad Bhagavatam, where like Chitraketu was being cursed by Parvati, and Lord Shiva is appreciating how Chitraketu reacts, because Chitraketu said, okay, yeah, sure, I'll take the curse and then become a demon. And Lord Shiva said, you see, like devotees are so exalted that they don't care whether they're in heaven or they're in hell. The main thing for them is devotional service. So they don't even care where they are. So from this we can understand how pure devotees actually, they're not always meditating, I want to go back to the spiritual world, because they just want to do what Krishna desires. So if Krishna desires you stay here in the material world because I want you to, help the fallen souls here, then the pure devotee says, okay, that's what I want to do because that's what Krishna wants me to do. but that's very, very high.
In the lower stages, we may want to recognise the disadvantages of the material world and
Yes.
recognise the advantages of Vaikuntha.
Yes.
As you say, in the beginning stages, we may want to aspire for that, you know. So that we've got the great devotees, they don't care where they are.
Yes, for us, like it's easier to see like how miserable is the material world, so we have the desire to go back to the spiritual world. That's very helpful. Thank you for this. Very nice.
I just had a question. I think initially we discussed that surrender at the neophyte stage might not be surrender at all because we have good days, we have bad days. So my question was, at the initial stage, do we not surrender at all? Or are there different stages of surrender?
Nice question, thank you. There are different levels of surrender. I mean, like if you think about even to come to the temple is an act of surrender because you're surrendering your time. You could be doing something, you know, like whatever you like to do, but you choose to come to the temple and to hear spiritual knowledge. That's an act of surrender. So everything, like every little is an act of surrender. When we chant is an act of surrender. But then also there are different levels. There are the highest level, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur in this song, you know, like we cannot even imagine to be at that level. But the point is that by, for example, reading like those verses about surrender, we can see the stage we're at and we can move a little bit further, So in that way we can advance. Does it help? Anything else?
Thank you for the nice lecture. I was thinking, surrender, sometimes we might think it's something that we can do. So I can surrender. But at the same time, is it really something we can do? Because to surrender, we have to first of all give up our ego. We have to, give up the control that the mind has on top of us. And like you said, it's more difficult to control the mind and to control the wind. So is an initial stage of surrender based on acceptance? So we just accept, okay, this is what the Shastra is saying. So the initial is about faith, isn't it? So we start to develop our faith and that's acceptance. And with this acceptance, then gradually that develops to greater stages of surrendering.
Yes.
Maybe how it works.
Yes, that's a very good point. It's actually without Krishna's mercy, any of this we wouldn't be able to do anyway. That's Krishna's mercy that we are even here. But certainly there is these two things, like in Damodar we say like the 2 inches, the effort and Krishna's mercy. So one side we have to make some effort to at least, like for example, the first 2, the active principles, something that we can do. If we find something that is conducive for our spiritual practice, then we should do more and increase more and more of that. And on the other side is also like something internal. It's something like you were saying, like acceptance, that Krishna, is the ultimate protector. So it's something that we kind of build up from our conviction of. That's why Shastra is so important. So important to read and meditate on the Shastra.
Because sometimes I was speaking to one devotee and he said, in the beginning it's very easy, Krishna consciousness is very easy because we just get to where we were in our previous life, where Krishna says, I preserve what you have and I can what you have. But once we get to where we were in our previous life, that's when we need to do more and we need to start chipping through. But that's when you start to think, well, I did, I'm following the process, I've surrendered, but what's going on?
Yeah.
Right now.
Because you're going so much slower than you used to. Yeah.
So then do you have any advice on this?
That actually when we understand, especially when we read the scriptures, we understand that this process, is so systematic, like all the stages, Shraddha, Sadhusanga, like you can see the stage where we're at. So we can see that actually even if we move forward so slowly that we think that are we even moving or are we going backwards? But actually, no, it's always progression. And sometimes that progression, it may not be manifest. You may find that sometimes it feels like we're going backwards. We're having like problems that we didn't have, you know, in the past. But that's actually because sometimes there is the analogy of some water, like think like a swimming pool or something, that in the bottom all the dirt is there and at the surface is clear. So when you try to clean, all the dirt is coming up, and before it looks like clean, but the thing is that all the dirt was in the bottom, so you couldn't see. So that's what's happening like at the beginning, that we think like I'm such a pure devotee, I'm going so fast, but actually it's that like all the dirt is at the bottom and we don't even see. So we think like I'm a pure devotee, I'm fantastic, I'm doing great. But it's just an illusion. Sometimes when the dirt comes out is when it gets clear. So it's actually very very good, even if it doesn't seem. And also there is this thing of humility, that the more we develop humility, the more we realize that we're actually not so good, and then it's something actually helpful for spiritual practice, because if we do devotional service with arrogance, with pride, then Krishna doesn't accept. So it's actually conducive. I think we should stop here.
Yes, can I just add on that? When somebody made an analogy with an aeroplane. So the devotees, when you become devotee, you're coming to the temple, you're practicing. It's like, yes, we're moving fast. It's like when you board an aeroplane, the plane is moving fast, and you can feel it's going fast. So that's in the beginning stage, moving. And then once it take off, when you are in the air, you don't know whether it's moving or not. It's moving faster. But you think that I'm not moving. But in fact, if you're a devotee, you're always moving. It's like the plane moving away. So you don't feel, but what's happening? I'm going backward, I'm going forward. But the plane is moving very fast. So it's like an analogy like that.
Thank you so much for that. Great analogy. And as long as we are in the association of devotees, either we want or we don't want, we are pushed forwards anyway. So that's the beauty of being here. Hare Krishna. Yes, can we take one last?
Yeah, one last. Can I just add into this? This is something what I have been taught since childhood, like to avoid arrogance and ego. You just like avoid thinking me. It's me, I have done it, I did it, I achieved it. If you put it aside and if you surrender completely to Lord Krishna and you stop thinking that something you have achieved, you did it, then if you don't think like that, because anything is happening is only by Krishna, and if you believe it and you forget yourself, putting me in the center, then you will avoid your ego, you will not be arrogant, and you will be always down to earth no matter where you go in your life. But so just that little thing you need to remove, me, like aham. So if you remove that aham, that ahamkar, which is what is called in English, I don't know, but like, that arroganceness, then
Ego.
you will, ego thing, so that will help.
Thank you so much. You make it sound so easy. Hare Krishna. Thank you.